Well, I always wanted to be a rock star. And how's your morning been so far?
Great.
Well, mine started early this morning, and I was discovered by Alan, who managed to spot me in my pyjamas out by the side of one of the buildings, collecting more rocks with a big blue bag. And I was really aware that there were a whole lot of windows there, and I thought, look, I just hope these people are still asleep. But no, not Alan, and he made a point of coming and letting me know that he saw me stealing rocks this morning, so thank you, Alan. So I'd like to welcome you to Stone Soup. Who's heard of stone soup? What a brilliant metaphor it is. There are so many different versions of stone soup. And when I think about stone soup, I think about each of us as really special, unique, wonderful gifts. Each of us so unique and so different in who we are and what we represent. And I think about the contribution that each of us make and the contributions that I've heard all of you talk about over these last couple of days, and I'm so completely inspired by your conversation and what I've heard. So think about stone soup as the bringing together of a collective mind. Because today is all about how we contribute to humanity. How do we contribute to society? And to look at that as one collective mind, that we are all connected, we are all one, is incredibly powerful. And so when I think about stone soup, I think about the richness of who all of us are. And it comes from an old story of a very poor community where scarcity was the number one thing. And a little boy had the insight to boil a pot of water, and that's all he had, was the pot of water boiling. And then somebody else said, well, I can put a carrot into that pot of water. And somebody else said, well, I can put in a bit of parsnip and I can put in a little bit of something else and a little bit of something else. And so before long there was a rich, amazing, wonderful soup that everybody could eat from. And it created a very rich and viable and wonderful community. And what I'm going to share with you over these, I hope I get a bit more time, but over this little while, is the richness of a very unique and highly evolved community in far north Queensland. A group of people that I pay special tribute to, a group of people that I believe are very wise, highly evolved in their consciousness. And when I think that they have invited me into their community and they've chosen me to work with them, I fill up. At times there are just no words in the English language to really describe that overwhelming emotion and that sense of gratitude. And so first and foremost I pay my tribute, my respect to those people, those communities, those wonderful human beings that have allowed me to step into their community and have allowed me to learn and have inspired me with their hearts and minds. So this is the story of a beautiful community, a story of my journey along the way. And some of you have seen this little 5-minute video. I'll show it to you again because it really does encapsulate for me the energy of what's been happening in this small remote community in far north Queensland. So, thank you. My passion and purpose in life is to help people build their dreams, to leave a legacy of contribution, service and hope for our future generations. And for me, that starts at home with my 2 sons, David and Justin. Many years ago, I made a promise to raise resilient, resourceful and compassionate young men. I believe they're absolutely on a path of purpose and service. And being a parent, it's given me the step up to look at life's contribution on a broader scale. So my passion now is in supporting communities, and in particular Indigenous communities, to create a narrative that takes us from a mindset of institutionalised control and fear and welfare dependency to a mindset of self-determination, self-governance, belonging and ownership. And so over the past few years I've developed a whole community approach that finds the balance between the viability of community and the spiritual well-being of its people. Because it works. The results are tangible and real. It's making a real difference in shifting the way we think about community development. The whole community change approach investigates the age-old questions. Who am I? What am I here for? What's deeply meaningful to me? I learned a long time ago that our wisdom lies in the questions that we ask, not in the answers that we pretend to have. The impact that this work is having at both the individual and collective levels, and in such a short space of time, it's rebuilding the social fabric. Young people are gaining employment. We're seeing joint ventures established for the first time. Cattle industry, housing, agriculture. We're seeing a shift away from welfare dependency towards revenue-making enterprise. Women are speaking up and taking up leadership roles. Indigenous mayors are forming their own alliance group and coming together on the topic of regional development. But most of all, we're seeing a sense of optimism, self-belief and hope. The ripple effect of creating a values-based community is real and it's working. In a community of 1,200 people labelled the fourth poorest community in Queensland, we've seen a shift in entropy from 32% to 9% in just over 18 months. Now that's a story worth telling.
It has made me realise that that which is impossible is possible.
We want to see a healthy tree grow by having those workshops.
The future for this small Indigenous community now looking a lot brighter.
The model is at the heart of what I do. It's enabled the conversation of belonging, ownership and caring for the whole. It allows us to measure the intangible. The philosophy of whole of community change to be expanded on a major scale, that the ripple effect touches the masses in a positive way. My faith is that I've planted a seed of ownership and change. I have a vision that I'm part of a council of elders that not only carries this message forward, but embeds it into the hearts and souls of its people. I believe we're creators of our own destiny. My message to you is to never give up, even in the face of adversity. The process of creating a values-driven community works, and it all starts with you, with each of you spending time in the stillness of who you truly are, and asking yourself that age-old question, who am I, and what am I here for? This is a fantastic event because it allows like-minded people to come together and share their stories, questions and wisdom. And in the lead up to the conference, I have a question for you. What is your soul calling you to do that will change the course of humanity? I'm looking forward to seeing you all in June. Cheers from Down Under. So, whole of community change starts with that one question, who am I? And so you've all got your rocks there, and what I'd like you to do is write one word that encapsulates who am I? One word. You've got a texter and you've got a rock. And if you don't have either, be telepathic. Take 30 seconds for that, because I know it's absolutely front of mind, that one word that encapsulates. Who am I?
Yeah.
When you've done that, I'd like you to turn to the person next to you. Talk in groups of 3s or 4s if there's 4 of you sitting there, and have a quick conversation about what is it that your soul is calling you to do that will change the path of humanity. You've got 2 minutes to come up with that amazing answer. 2 minutes.
Human. Du är människan. Ja. Skriv kärlek. Så människor kan vara kärleksfulla. De är kärleksfulla. Så att det är det man måste hitta, kärleken till. Och mänsklighet.
Ja, det där är ju det, det är ju identiteten. Det där är ju vad vi på något sätt. Vi är ju humans. Det är en kapsel. Som du säger, det kanske är
det gör det. Men jag tänker på en human så måste man alls. Det kan man göra
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, we're undertaking these activities in record time. And I know you've had the last couple of days to come up with that amazing statement. What is it that your soul calls you that will change the path of humanity? And take that sentiment, even if you haven't come up with clarity around that, take that feeling, that sentiment into the next activities that you do throughout the course of the day, and watch that sentiment, that feeling start to shape itself into absolute clarity by the end of the day. So there's your challenge. So, whole of community change, a philosophy of ownership and self-determination. My world started in corporate. So 27 years in corporate banking. I was a senior manager for risk and compliance. And my job was to deploy risk management culture globally across the organisation. And when I was asked, Annalise, can you do that? What do you think I said? Yes! The answer to how is yes. You'll work out how you're going to do it later on. And what I learnt really, really quickly is that unless lines of business or clients had absolute ownership of what they were doing, then we would always fall short of what the outcome was going to be. So this thinking of ownership, this thinking of respect and self-determination started for me a really, really long time ago. And I brought it into Indigenous cultures. About 5 years ago, I was asked to be a godmother for a little girl in Cape York. And I accepted the invitation. I went to Cape York for 4 days, a 4-day holiday, and I met these 2 wonderful elders. And we started talking about my conversation of ownership and self-determination. They started to get really, really interested, and they invited me to their community to have a conversation. 4 days became 2 weeks, 2 weeks became 3 months. 3 months became 12 months, leave without pay. After 12 months, my boss rang me. He said, "Annalise, are you ever coming back?" And I said, no, I'm not coming back. It's time for me to move on. And so my life in the Cape began. And that was the first day that I actually delivered a presentation. I had no idea I was delivering it. I turned up in this community and a whole lot of people started piling into this conference room. and I thought I was there for a cup of tea. And I thought, wow, all these people have turned up. There must be somebody really important coming today. I wonder who it is. I went and sat amongst the group and I thought, wow, what's going to happen today? And then Des, he called me out to the front of the room and he handed me a texter and there was a whiteboard and he said, "Present." Well, you can imagine my corporate head, senior management. Do you ever go anywhere without an agenda? Do you ever go anywhere without a PowerPoint presentation? Do you ever go anywhere without being really clear about what are the 3 outcomes that I've got to get out of this meeting? Well, I had nothing, and except this texter and a whiteboard. And so that was a wonderful learning for me, because in that moment I had to be very, very present and very clear about who I am and what I stand for, and to have absolute presence and respect for the people in front of me. And I delivered a conversation and questions and dialogue. And at one point I remember one of the elders, he banged his hand on the table and he said, "This is what we want." And I thought, wow, what are we getting? And so we started with a blank canvas, and that is my message to you when you walk into communities, when you walk into organisations, to have the respect to tap into the wisdom of the collective. Walk in there with a blank agenda, but with an absolute knowing about who you are and what you stand for, and watch that magic start to flow. That huge lesson for me. So this is where I spend most of my time, in the northernmost point of Queensland. And to cut a long story short, I fell in love with the people, I fell in love with the area, and the rest is history. So my play area is in that northernmost tip, and I live here in Victoria, right down the bottom, so it takes me a little while to get to work. I do disappear into the Never Never Land for weeks at a time, and I absolutely love it. So, okay, now this picture here, when I was introduced to one particular community, I asked an elder to draw me a picture of what it was that he imagined his community could become over a period of time. And he drew me a picture, and in that picture are things like a school, a bus, birthing centre, a civic centre, a sealed road, library, things that if I was to ask you to imagine a community, a place where you work or a place where you live, a lot of these things we would take for granted. True? A birthing centre, yeah, a school where we can walk our kids to school, sealed roads, road signage, street lights. But these are the things that he asked for. But what he also asked for was to have this place of choice. What he was looking for, he said, "Annalise, what we need is choice. We need connection. We need this sense of belonging to Mother Earth." And I'm going to come back to this towards the end of the presentation, because what I saw in this community looked a little bit more like this, where hope, education, career opportunity was so far away from the reality of this community. It really, really struck me. So the ripple effect of ownership and self-determination began in this community, and this was the message that they were absolutely wanting and they were ready for. So the program is about shifting a mindset of welfare dependency, of institutionalised control, of over-servicing, to this mindset of belonging, ownership and self-determination. And all of it starts because when I think about the complexities of what this really means, I thought, wow, where do I begin? So to take away all of that complexity, the only place we can begin is, who am I? Let's start to have that dialogue with the people around us. Who am I? What's deeply meaningful to me? Which I believe the words that you put after this are probably the most significant words that you can ever imagine, because our words shape our reality. Our language generates reality. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about language in a moment. This is Keely. Keely is a lorikeet and a very important totem in this particular community where I've been working. And this is Marianne Coconut, a community elder from the Thanagwith, East and Doon, Lanuge area. She is an elder who is very, very close to my heart. And I'm going to come back to Marianne and the lorikeet at the end of this presentation. So keep that present. You'll see the lorikeet appearing throughout the presentation. So this community was labelled the fourth poorest community, and I use the word labelled carefully because is it really or is it not? Is it a perception? Is it a reality? When we start to use labels, we start to create a reality. But it was labelled the fourth poorest community. As they undertook this whole community change philosophy, these are the results that we saw in a very short space of time. 60% increase in employment. Reduction, 80% of children attending Safe House. 80% reduction in domestic violence, in court appearances. And we saw community getting more involved with their own policies and their own programs. The council almost doubled its employment. Some fantastic results there. We saw the administration and supermarket centres start to become established, all things that we take for granted. Joint ventures established for the first time, where it wasn't just jobs for Indigenous people, but Indigenous people actually owning part of the business, owning the design of their own homes. How great is that? Isn't that what we always do? Restaurant and takeaway food shop. We started to see more construction. The sports oval was refurbished. Clubhouse. And here's Marianne Coconut again, and what she wanted to see was a war memorial, an Anzac memorial to recognise Indigenous fallen soldiers. This is the first time a war memorial has been erected in an Indigenous community, and they opened it yesterday and they sent me photos last night. So over the moon, excited, happy, this is fantastic. So they've got their war memorial. And this is such a place of remembrance and gathering. Remember, this is about building social capital. We're seeing the community hall has been, this is all about creating community pride. The daycare centre, I remember interviewing some young women and them saying to me, Annalise, you know, we don't even have anywhere to leave our kids, even if we want to work. And I said, well, write it down on paper. This is the magic. Have a thought, write it down. Once you've written it down, have the courage to declare it. And then watch magic happen. Don't worry about how, just start saying yes. They've now got their daycare centre, their preschool, and they've won industry awards for it. New roads and town signage. This is a proud community. So we've seen now this shift away from welfare dependency towards revenue-making community, a community that's proud and is growing its spiritual development. Men and women speaking up. This was a healing program where I took 18 women away to a place called Mungali Falls. We had a fantastic time for 3 days. All of it, pure conversation, stone soup. Who am I? Remembering who we truly are and what's important to us. Mayors coming together in their own time to talk about regional development. Our youth are speaking up, creating job opportunities. This is all part of the leadership and career program that's now running in the community. We've seen 66% increase in employment in just 10 months. 18 months later, I went back and interviewed them again, 75% employed. These statistics are absolutely mind-blowing. We've introduced Time Bank. Who knows what Time Bank is? Isn't it fantastic? The currency for Time Bank is 1 hour of your time. Just a fantastic philosophy that's now been introduced into the community. So everybody's time and work is valued, and some great initiatives. We've got a fantastic building up of this archive. So the ripple effect of creating this values-based community, it's real and it's working. So my message to you is to not give up on this. There are times when the road is a little bit like this, and you feel like you're climbing up a mountain and you're hanging on with your nails and you can feel your nails are scratching down the side of this mountain, but this process works. Okay, so creating community. I've given you the first clue here. What's it take to actually create community? Initial thoughts. One of them's already up there. What's it take to actually create community? Interaction. Connection. Dialogue. Willingness. Acceptance. Openness.
Tolerance.
Pardon?
Tolerance.
Yeah, absolutely. Tolerance. Respect. So all of these things play a role. To have this sense of belonging, I'm going to give you two versions of belonging. One of them is two-dimensional. The other one is my version of fourth-dimensional. So to have this place of belonging, if this is a policy document and it belongs to me, then I've had a part in its co-creation. If I've had a part in its co-creation, I'm going to take ownership of it. If I take ownership of it, I'm going to nurture it. I'm going to look after it. I'm going to take accountability for it. True or not true? Yeah? That's fair enough, isn't it? But when this policy document lands on my desk and someone says, implement it, how do I feel? I feel disengaged, I feel resistance, I feel disrespected. Take 200 years of that, of being done to, of paternalism and of control and of intervention. So to have this place of belonging is where you've had a part in the co-creation of something that's vitally important to you. But here's my version of a fourth dimension of belonging. And I discovered it accidentally. I come from Italy. I was born in Italy in a place called Palermo. And when I was in my early 20s, I went back to visit Italy. We moved to Australia when I was very young. And as the plane was coming into Palermo, I remember starting to feel really very nervous, an overwhelming emotion. And I thought, what is this overwhelming emotion? And as the plane got closer and closer to the tarmac and then landed, it was this huge emotion that I just couldn't explain. And I didn't understand. It's always stayed with me, but I've never understood it until in the last few years I started to work with Indigenous communities. And I understood that what I was experiencing was a connection to country, was a connection to Mother Nature, was a sense that I don't own land, I don't own country, country owns me. It is all in one. And what I was feeling was that sense of oneness. So when we talk about belonging with an Indigenous culture, we are talking about that connection to Mother Earth that we are a part of, that we can never be separated from. And that is incredibly powerful, and a very powerful message for government to listen to. The second one, and it took for my son Justin, because this is them in the out in the Mediterranean, out near where I was born, and Justin said to me, he's the youngest standing up, and he said to me, "Mum, I understand now why I never fitted in Melbourne." Mind you, I had no idea he wasn't fitting in. I said, "Oh, why? What happened?" And he said, "Because I belong here. This is my country." And so this sense of connection to country is ancestral. You know, Justin was born in Melbourne. How could he be feeling that? It is so powerful. So this place of, this second element is around connectedness. Who sat in level 7 last night when we started the exercise? Who sat in level 5? 4? Who was in level 1 in survival? Who are the survivors here with me? You and me. Brilliant. Okay. When we have this place of connectedness, my success is your success. My failure is your failure. There are no levels. Is that okay to say? Because I left for just a few minutes and I wasn't sure where you got to with all of that. So I'm taking a risk here. There are no levels. Okay, we are all interconnected. We are all one. So this place of connectedness, my success is your success. I don't know what's happened here. I've lost it. Oh, okay. I don't want to take it off. This caring for the whole. To leave our individual agendas at the back door and to come together in a conversation about what is it that is good for all of us, what are we here to create together. To drop that pebble in the pond and know that every word I'm saying, every thought that I have, every behaviour that I demonstrate creates a ripple effect for the common good. Or not. Make a choice. And this is the one that I love the most. We need to start changing our language, how we label things. In the health services, we refer to people as cases. I don't know about you, but if I'm referred to as a case, I don't like it. We refer to our children as youth at risk. Our kids are entrepreneurs and they do excellent graffiti. Let's harness it. Let's honour it. Let's turn it into something fantastic. Our language generates reality. So the whole of community change approach is about changing our language from our communities are not problems to be solved. So rather than coming in and looking for the challenge, looking for the problem, looking for the issue, look for stone soup. Have a conversation about stone soup. Have a conversation about possibility. Now, whether I still do a lot of corporate work. So whether I'm doing corporate work, I might change my definitions a little bit because we do need to resonate with our audience, and that's okay. But your heart doesn't shift and your philosophy doesn't change. When you apply these 4 principles to any strategy, to community development, to whatever it is that you're doing, can you possibly go wrong? It is what it is. So the outcomes are actually irrelevant, but your responsibility is this starting point. And therefore, it doesn't matter whether you're entering, whether an entropy is up here or it's down here or it's somewhere in the middle. It doesn't matter. Everybody deserves the honour, the integrity, the respect of hearing this and starting with this, and watch a magnificent strategy start to evolve. There's so much more that I'd like to share with you. I'm going to stop at this slide and take a couple of questions from you. But just to wrap up, this is about moving from the root cause of failure to the root cause of success. From looking at our problems as deficiencies and needs, we have spent an enormous amount of money, billions of dollars, in servicing deficiencies and needs. How about we start to refocus our funding and put it into possibilities and gifts and restoring the social fabric of community? So this is the difference. creating social fabric creates a sense of belonging. When we have a sense of belonging and spiritual development, hey, the sky's the limit, things happen. This community, they're doing it for themselves. So, one more quote. The behaviour of sadness and disengagement. Why are communities disengaged? Because they are constantly told they're wrong, because they are constantly told they have a problem. So let's start shifting our language and taking responsibility for that. So I'm going to leave it there. I'll just share with you that entropy again, and this community shifted its entropy in just over 2 years. Now this is phenomenal. I think I'm one of Richard's maybe first pioneers in using the model, and I've run countless diagnostics. I've never seen a result like this. But perhaps it was the first time that I took the courage to go forward with those principles and believe in my own heart, this is real, this is possible, and this is going to work. So maybe, just maybe, it was the shift in myself that created a ripple effect. Maybe.
Yes, it was.
So, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, that's very honouring. Can I show you one more slide? I'm going to quickly whiz past this. There's so much information here. Next time, can I have 3 hours, please? Quick. The very, very last slide is coming back to this one. Remember that ripple effect of who am I has now manifested itself into, it's been accepted into Queensland public policy, so that's a huge step forward. So let's start believing in our politicians, because there are beacons of light out there. So let's start changing our language around our perceptions and beliefs of politicians. This was the picture that the elder drew for me. They've now ticked off over 95% of everything that's on that picture, except KFC. They haven't got their KFC. Okay? So be careful what you wish for, because it might just happen. And finally, Keely, this is the last slide, Keely the lorikeet, who is very special to Marianne. Recognition, appreciation, acknowledgement for the work that you do when you are coming from a place of soul will come to you in the most unexplained ways, and when you don't expect it. And Marianne rang me a couple of months ago and she said, Annalise, I've been thinking about you. She's an elder of this community. And she said, I'd like you to be an adopted daughter of my tribal land. And I started to cry. And she said, I have a language name for you, and your language name is Keely. And I asked her, what does Keely mean? And she said, it represents the lorikeet. And so I am Keely and the lorikeet. And then I asked, well, so what does the lorikeet actually mean? And this blew me away completely. And she said, it's the lorikeet represents the messenger between heaven and earth. And for me, that was the greatest acknowledgement for my contribution. And so have faith. So for whatever you take from this for yourselves and into the day and moving forward, I give you my absolute best. So thank you everyone for listening.